The other part of it is that I run through an exercise where we talk about, at our best, what do we see around here?
So, Rob, why are beliefs important in business?
Look, I think the interesting thing is that probably going back 100 years to the factory model of Ford and so on, there was a huge tilt towards execution. How do we just get much better in our factory mindset, people as pawns in a game, and let's just have a huge factory and just get super productive. So that model went on for decades. In the 1950s, this whole strategy revolution came about, and there's since been dozens of iterations of how to frame strategy. And that was, if you like, people want to go from just doing better to saying, well, how do we get better thinking inside our business? And I think there's probably been a reflection that there's been a lot of strategic failures. Somewhere only between 10 and 20% of strategies are seen to actually succeed.
Interesting.
And so why the failure? And part of it is the piece I explained at the start of our discussion, which is that people don't properly articulate their strategy into what they're going to do to execute it.
Right.
But I also don't think that strategy is sufficiently informed from the belief system. And so I think the next piece of battleground, if you like, is going into the belief system much more strongly and saying, what do we believe as a business?
Yeah.
Why do we do what we do in a purpose sense? What are the values and behaviours by which we'll conduct ourselves? And when we have that as a background, what's our vision for what we could do, for the dent we could make in the world? And I think that sense of, if you like, that spiritual foundation or that belief foundation for a business helps give it a left and right of arc in terms of the permissions that it can then have when it goes out into the market.
So do you have an example of what a positive belief and a negative belief are?
I think I think more than positive or negative, it's about aligned beliefs. So it's about saying, what are the beliefs that are true for the organisation? What are those handful of rules that we live by in our own business? My sense of it is that a lot of people, they'll go out and say develop their values by Googling world's best values, and they'll come up with 5 to 10 values for their business, which are unrelated to how people actually behave.
Yeah.
So the disbelief or the disconnect is not that the values aren't appropriate; they're just not appropriate for them.
Yeah.
And so people say, this isn't us.
So how do you help them form their own beliefs? And I mean, that's the first step, right? And then you've got to get alignment with the rest of the business.
Sure.
How
So
do you go about that?
Well, I think there's two sides to it. One is there's a strong guide to this, I think, from what the owner, founder, CEO believes, because they will what they believe in will and should strongly inform what the business believes. The other part of it is that I run through an exercise where we talk about, at our best, what do we see around here in terms of behaviour? And I just get them to come up with words, and we tend to just whack all those out on sticky notes, and we look for clusterings of things. And what we try to do in that process is to say, look, this won't be us all the time, but if somebody, and Jim Collins in his work calls this, a mission to Mars exercise. So if somebody, if the Martians came and met one of your staff, they don't speak English, what would they make of what they see in the behaviours? And so we normally like to capture 5 clusters of behaviours that are represented by a value, and probably more importantly than the value sentence itself is capturing those behaviours that will tell us that value is alive.
Yeah.
And so this is the gap.
This is where the metrics come in, right?
Well, it can be metrics, but it's often those sets of individual behaviours that will actually tell us. You can have a behaviour like, people will say, etch in glass at the front of their wheel, respect. Oh, that's good. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah. How do you know
And
somebody's
so-
doing that?
And
Yeah.
so what we like people to do is maybe capture three to five sentences or phrases that reflect the sorts of behaviours that we'll see in our business that tell us that we have respect, or that we have teamwork,
Yep.
or that we have care for our customer, that we really believe in safety, and those sorts of things. And so that, and this is part of going back to my earlier point about one of the things the owners really want is to unload themselves. And if you have a belief system that is more self-regulating because the team get that set of behaviours is about all of us, and they can hold each other to account rather than relying on the single boss to have to pull people up all the time, for example.